There it is, right there. That divot is not before the ball. The low point of that swing starts at the ball with the divot happening after the ball. The most basic skill any golfer needs to learn is the ability to control the low point of the swing. And yet this seemingly simple looking task is anything but simple at all. In fact, I would say that low point control, or the lack of low point control, is the #1 deficiency plaguing golfers worldwide. So if you're tired of hitting fat shots, then thin shots, then topping the ball, then today's video is going to teach you how to learn the skill of low point control. You can train this skill to become a better ball striker and a better golfer. Let's begin by defining what we mean by low point control. And if you've watched enough of my videos, you should be somewhat familiar with this topic. But if you're not, if you're new here, I want to show you what I mean. Low point control discusses where the bottom of the swing arc occurs during a golf swing. And put simply, it can really either happen before the golf ball, at the golf ball, or after the golf ball. In expert players, all shots struck from the ground have the low point of the swing after the ball. That means the club hits the ball first and then continues on a downward trajectory into the ground, taking a divot. That's true of all shots with all clubs from the ground by expert players. Conversely, the poorest golfers would struggle to get the low point of their swing after the ball. They tend to have it before the ball, resulting in fat shots, thin shots, and top shots. The inconsistent contact can be directly linked to the location of the low point of the swing. And this is why stack and tilt defines low point control as the #1 fundamental. That makes it the most important thing you could ever learn to do. It's the most basic task in golf, and yet it's overlooked by so many players. Another way you could think about low point control would be just to think about contact quality. The consistency and quality of contact is again directly linked to the ability to control the bottom of your golf swing. I often share this video from Stack and Tilt's Mike Bennett, where he stands on the driving range and hits 17 shots in a row from a line he's drawn on the ground. And his ability to strike the ball first and the ground second multiple times without any errors is a sign that he's an expert golfer. In fact, this skill really defines your golf game. It defines how good you can be. There's a strong correlation between low point control and handicap. So if you want to be a better golfer, getting better at this exact skill should be a #1 priority for you. And if you're looking for the most expert demonstration of this skill, look no further than Bryson DeChambeau demonstrating this fairway bunker drill where he's controlling the bottom of his swing, the strike point of his club on the ground expertly.
I want you to, just for 1 second, just for fun, I want you to see how many times I actually, on 10 swings, hit the line. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Didn't miss it once.
0 errors from one of the world's best players. There's a reason these players pay attention to this skill. There's a reason Stack and Tilt make it fundamental #1. It's absolutely vital that you develop this skill if you want to play better golf. So then what is it that makes this seemingly simple looking task so difficult for you to accomplish? And why can expert players do this without fail every single time? Well, it starts by understanding where you place your weight throughout the swing. And simply put, if I wanted to hit the ground after the ball, so I wanted to make contact with the ball first and the ground second, I would teach a swing where a golfer has more weight after the ball, in front of the ball effectively, when they hit it. So when you make contact with the golf ball, the further forward your weight is will determine and play a big role in where the bottom of that swing arc is going to be. Take a look at this demonstration from world #1 Scotty Scheffler. You can see how far forwards he moves his weight in the downswing. All good golfers do that. They have their weight primarily on their front foot when they hit the ball. That in itself is the most basic way to control low point, get the low point after the ball. So conversely, that stands to reason that the poorest golfers would not demonstrate that. They do the opposite. They'd have the weight too far back, maybe favoring the back leg. And by moving in this way, I'm making the likelihood of the bottom of my swing to be further back behind the ball. You may not be this far back, you may be somewhat in the middle, but even that's going to cause you issues. So the number one thing you're not doing is you don't have your weight forward enough. And the second biggest issue when it comes to controlling that low point is managing the radius of the swing, primarily via good arm structure. So most of you who struggle with consistent contact will see that your arms are flexing through the swing, particularly through impact, as you hit the ball and into the follow through. As you bend your arms, you raise the club away from the ground. That shortens the radius of the swing, makes it harder for you to get down to the ball. That typically is going to result in thin shots or top shots. Good golfers, by contrast, have their arms extremely straight when they hit the ball and just into the follow through. So weight forward and arms straight could be four of the most important words you ever think about when you make a golf swing. In fact, it's no surprise once again that those four words, weight forward and arms straight, form up four of the stack and tilt 10-word template. That's how important they are. Keeping the weight forward and keeping the arms straight are two of the best things you could ever do if you wanted to control your low point. Weight forward, arms straight. Solid contact. Ball first, ground second. That was like a long chip shot I just hit here with a 7-iron. It's got 140 yards. That chip shot theory would actually make sense to me as to where you should start your practice with this drill. You think about when you're taught to chip the ball, what are some of the things that you're told to do? In my mind, when I'm teaching chipping, I would often describe the need from a setup perspective to put more weight on the front foot. That would be weight forward. I'd also talk about keeping the arms fairly straight so that I can strike the mat or strike the grass in the same point every time. Setting up with my weight slightly forward, my hands slightly forward, promotes this downward strike into the ball. So I'm taught that for chipping because that's the most important thing with chipping, contact, getting the strike correct, because if I get the strike correct, I can predict how far the ball's going to go. Same should be said for the full swing. Really, you should start out with your weight forward, your arms straight, and try to mimic that same feeling of weight forward and arms straight into the follow through. It's just a long chip shot. I would start right there as your practice. Weight forward, arms straight. If you can't control the contact doing the drill like I just demonstrated, then you really should not be trying to progress to a fuller, longer swing. It's generally when that starts to break down, is when you make the swing longer, you start moving your weight around. As you lengthen the swing, the radius breaks down because the arm structure is poor. You start bending your elbows, you start flexing your wrists. So now I've got much less chance of bringing this club back down where I need to. The bottom of the swing arc's been compromised in an attempt to create more power. But the problem is if you create more power and have a poor contact, that additional potential power is pointless because it doesn't go into the ball. Good golf is about good contact first and foremost, because good contact promotes consistent distance. The ability to hit this club or any club a predictable distance is really the skill you're looking for. Not to hit it as far as you possibly can, but to hit this club the same distance as often as possible. That starts with contact. Contact comes from low point. So if you make good contact, you hit the ball a predictable distance. You hit the ball a predictable distance, you can hit the ball closer to the flag. And if you hit the ball closer to the flag, you become a better golfer, you shoot lower scores. So now you're familiar with the concept of low point control, what it is, and some of the factors that influence exactly where the bottom of your swing takes place. Now it's time to show you exactly how to practice this. And at this point in time, I'm going to sympathize with some of you right now, because practicing from a driving range mat like the one I'm standing on does not provide you with the good feedback you need to develop this skill. There's two major problems with driving range mats. Number one, it doesn't show you where the club hit the ground, as it would do if you were practicing from grass. You don't get to see exactly where this club struck the mat. So you don't get that immediate feedback that would be very useful for you in order to develop this skill. The second problem with driving range mats is probably bigger than the first one, and that's the fact that if you strike the ground slightly before the ball on a driving range mat, so you hit the ground before the ball, that would be an error. Oftentimes, if you hit close enough to the ball, the club will still bounce off the mat, bounce into the ball, and produce a shot that looks very functional. In fact, sometimes hitting just before the ball on a driving range mat can produce a really good shot. So the ball flies high, the ball flies straight, the ball flies far. You think you're doing great, you think you're developing your golf swing, you think things are getting better. You take that same swing out onto the golf course to play your game at the weekend, and you make that same contact with the ground some inch to 2 to 3 behind the ball, you are going to get a very different outcome, as I'm sure you'll know from experience. Hitting behind the ball off the grass is going to produce that fat shot, that heavy contact where the ball doesn't fly as it should. So the difference between hitting slightly behind the ball on a mat and slightly behind the ball on the grass is enormous, and yet you're not getting to see that vital feedback every time you practice. So if you really want to develop the skill of low point and you don't have access to practicing from the grass, then you need something that's going to tell you exactly where your club hit the ground. This training aid called the divotboard does just that. As you strike the mat, the sequins change color, they flip over, and we get to see exactly where the club struck the ground. Hugely beneficial tool for all of you watching for sure, and it would help you to identify where your skill or weakness may lie, what you need to practice and where your error typically happens. I'm going to hit some shots using this device to show you, number one, how tricky it is to control the low point, and number two, to show you how you could develop the skill of low point control using this device. So this thing works in a really simple way, this flat surface, which when I strike it, the sequins that are on top of this board are going to be flipped over. We get a change in color from the green to the white. We're going to see if we hit behind the ball, we're going to see if we miss the mat altogether, and then we're going to see also whether we hit towards the toe of the club or towards the heel, which is also extremely useful feedback. So let's go ahead and just try this, even without a ball to start with, just to see how easy it is to strike the mat in the correct place. So let me start out by making some of those weight forward, arm straight swings that I was making earlier. Just rest the club on top of the mat, put my weight forward, feel like I keep my arms straight, go ahead, try to hit the mat. That's a perfect demonstration there of putting the club onto the mat in exactly the right place. The sequins start to change color just here in the center of the golf ball, and they continue to the end of the mat. I would say that it's easier to control the low point making the swing that I just demonstrated. Having the weight forward, having the arms straight is really an easier way to do this. But even as I just demonstrated that, you see I hit just half an inch behind the ball. That might produce enough of a miss hit for my ball not to fly quite as far as I was expecting it to. So the tolerance we have here is extremely small. And the higher your handicap, the wider your dispersion of hitting this mat will be. You'll typically hit further back on the mat than the better player, and you'll find that the spread to which you could hit this mat is, as I say, the widest. The best golfers would demonstrate the fact that they always hit after the ball. That one's too far forward, that would be thin. That one too. But the best golfers would demonstrate hitting after the ball, like that. And the tolerance and the window within which they hit the mat would also be the tightest. Think back to that Bryson video from earlier. So your job, with or without the golf ball to start with, is to look at where your club's hitting the ground, make sure it's after the ball, and continue to train this skill until you can tighten up that contact point on the ground to within just an inch or even less. Weight forward, arm straight, divot's pretty good. Just at the ball, contact felt nice. So I'm going to get some feedback from the club. Of course, I'm going to recognize if the strike was good, but I want to be able to relate that back to the mat. So the contact felt very nice. Looks like it was pretty much in the center of the face as well. Divots after the ball, strike felt good. So that's the progression you'd work through. Use the mat to help you identify where you hit the ground. The biggest thing I would take away from this, in my experience of using this training aid for some number of years now, is the shock on people's faces when they try to do this. you will likely find this much more difficult than you think it should be. You likely think you're much better at this skill than you really are. And yet, because it's not highlighted to you in such a clear and obvious way every time you swing, you're able to overlook this skill. You're able to brush it under the carpet to some extent, not truly recognizing how deficient you are at this skill. So when you try this for the first time, you may well be surprised at how difficult you find this. But take that as some good feedback. Seeing how poor you might be at this to begin with is the first step on the road to becoming better at this skill. And as I said right at the beginning of this video, developing this skill is absolutely vital if you want to be a better golfer. And if you want the $1 version of that drill, then grab a golf ball box, an empty one, and place it down on the ground behind your ball whenever you practice. Place it down around one grip width away from the ball. So one length of the golf grip towards this box. That's going to create this barrier here at the back, which is going to force me to have a more descending blow into the golf ball. In order for me to swing, miss this box, hit down and hit the ball correctly and then the ground, I have to do a couple of things that are somewhat extreme to a normal swing. One would be have my weight more forward. Number two would be to have my hands more forward, hitting down with the shaft lean. This is somewhat extreme, and I would encourage you to do this first without a ball. Try to swing and strike the mat without hitting the box. In order to do this exercise, you are going to need to have more wrist hinge or wrist bend, as I suggested, to produce this shaft lean so that this club can come down, miss the golf ball box, and strike the ground. In addition to that, as I've mentioned, you're going to want to have your weight more forward. This is a really nice way to start to feel where you need to be in order to get that low point of your swing far enough forwards. And then you can introduce the ball. I've got a 7-iron here. I'd say to you, try this first of all with like a pitching wedge or a 9-iron. Keep the swing small. Try to get the contact correct. There's the weight forward, there's the arm straight. The sensation of that really nice contact was very evident. I'm trying to show you ways here to push you way beyond where you currently are. There's no way that if you're a poor ball striker, there's no way you're doing what I just demonstrated there. That's going to feel extremely foreign to you. You're going to find that as you swing back, first of all, you're likely to hit the box on the way back. We don't want to do that. There's this horrible video I saw this week online of Nick Faldo teaching a poor beginner golfer to shift 80% of his weight onto his right leg as he swings back. Take the club away like this and lift his lead leg off the ground. It's the most awful golf instruction video I've ever seen. Just because you're a good golfer doesn't make you a good teacher. So if you're hitting the box on the way back, that could be a sign that you're already starting to shift your weight away from the target. You wouldn't want to do that. So missing the box on the way back and missing the box on the way down. Many of you will strike this box in the downswing. You may be able to go back and have the club go above it, but as you come down in your attempt to hit the ball, you're going to widen your swing arc prematurely. You're going to start casting and uncocking your wrists so you'd strike the golf ball box before the ball. This is a really simple but very effective way to train the appropriate amount of weight forward, shaft lean or hands forward to help you start hitting the ground further forward. Remember, the entire purpose of this video is to teach you low point control. All of you watching this who struggle are going to have the low point of your swing before the ball. So you need to move it further forwards. These exercises that I've shared with you today will help you to do just that. You need to take these to the range, you need to implement them immediately. Start out small, weight forward, arms straight. Take the golf ball box drill idea and implement that as well. All of these things will help to move your low point more forward, help you to become a better ball striker, which ultimately helps you to become a better golfer. If you're keen to learn more about the divot board and maybe pick one of these up for your own practice sessions, then I'll leave a link down in the description. If you click that link, it helps to support the channel, and if you use the code STACKAPOOR, you'll also get $10 off your purchase. One other excellent idea to use in terms of moving your low point more forward would be to look at the ground in front of the ball. That's the simplest hack you could ever use. Don't look at the ball, look at the ground in front of it. You'll be amazed how quickly your ball striking can improve. Give that one a try next time you're at the driving range. If you enjoyed today's video, guys, I'd love you to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. It's my goal with this channel to educate you to become a better golfer. And when we talk about big problems within golf, the worldwide epidemic that is poor low point control really does plague almost every single one of you out there. So if you're not working on this skill, you're probably not really looking to get better at golf. So if you want to keep working on this skill, you're looking for other drills that might help you, you could go and check out this video that I made right here. This one has a secret ball position drill that encourages you to train, ingrain, and improve your low point control.